shall grow not old, as we that left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
Here is the Prime Minister of Australia, the Right Honourable R.G. Menzies.
Fellow Australians, it is my melancholy duty to inform you officially that in consequence of a persistence by Germany in her invasion of Poland, Great Britain has declared war upon her, and that as a result, Australia is also at war.
General Cosgrove, when asked in 2004 in an interview who was the best soldier ever, he hesitated for a minute and then said, Diver Derrick. My name's Colin Stevens. I'm a member of the Semaphore Port Adelaide RSL. My connection here was first established by my uncle, who was a veteran of the Second World War. I've been coming here since I was a young fella. It's a good place to associate and remember our diggers. Thomas Currie Derrick, diver, VC DCM, was born in Madindi in South Australia, in Adelaide. He moved down to Port Adelaide and went to Lefevre Peninsula School. Lived and worked down here for a while through the early Depression years. A bit of a larrikin, left school by the time he was 14. As the Depression worsened in 1931, he lost his job here. In the end, he and a few of his mates decided to go to the Riverland, and they rode their bikes from Adelaide to Berry. He got work in Berry.
Because we used to start works at 7 o'clock, and I'd only just got down the block and I was sitting in the channel. You know, I know you've seen the channels on blocks like those days, and there's not many of them about now. And I was sitting in there and sharpening my knife on the bank of the channel, on the concrete. And Tom come up and he said, well, when I saw him coming, I thought, oh, Jesus, I knew him, but I'd never spoken to him, hadn't met him at all. But he had a bit of a reputation, and I was sort of, Jesus, I don't know how this is. But he told me, anyway, he said, your boss about? And I said, well, he'd be on the way down. I said, he should be here in about 10 minutes. He said, I'm just looking for that job, so Jack Quinn. He said he can't work anymore on the picking, so he said, come out and see if I can get his job. I said, well, Dad'll be here in a minute anyway. So it was only a few minutes and Dad turned up. He said, well, told him who he was and everything. He said, I just wonder if I could get the job that Jack had. He said, I'm looking for work. And Dad said, you picked grapes before? He said, yes. He said, well, you can pick with a lad, you'll be right. So away we went. Within 10 minutes, we were the best of mates.
He come about his nickname of Diver, which is conjecture on the biography. Some say that it was from his diving into the Port River. He got the nickname Diver. Others say that it's a slang or a colloquialism for anyone that lived in or around the ports or the harbours. They were cockle divers. He also was credited with knocking out 2 German tanks with sticky bombs, which are a bomb with a timer that's coated in actual grease, and they actually either lob it onto the tank or they run up and stick it onto the side of the tank. And he took out 2 tanks, and they captured 100 German prisoners. That's what he got his DCM for. He also was sent to New Guinea to capture Finchhaven. Now, Finchhaven, just above the city, the township, there's a ridge called Petalburg, and they advanced to the bottom of this hill, and it was almost a sheer hillside, 1,000 metres up, covered in jungle, and the Japanese had machine gun nests perched all over the top of it, where they could shoot straight down the hill they could lob hand grenades down onto the soldiers, and they were told to actually withdraw. And Derrick, who was in charge of his company, said that they could take this if they let them have a go.
And going to be in a patrol, but at that stage, rifleman was forward scout. I don't know why the hell, and you had this forward and two forward scout, and you had to send a message back to the person in charge of the patrol. You know, we went out and we went right up underneath them, and next thing was yabba 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 and yabba yabba there. And I sent back the message, I said, we're in between the bastards. But anyway, the next thing, the one on the left-hand side said, over there by that bloody great white tree. And I thought, well, that's our mob. But we had a standing patrol goes out and sits and watches. Recce patrol goes out and searches. And but they never told me that we had a standing patrol out there. Anyway, we went right up underneath them, and Diver went in next day. And they got belted shit out of them, and they went back and they told Diver to pull out, and Diver says, let's have another go. Yeah. And that's when it all happened.
Okay.
So he actually climbed up the hill under fire. His troops cover fired him. And they said he was lobbing hand grenades. He was hanging onto the jungle growth with one hand, and he was lobbing hand grenades into the machine gun nests, and then with accurate rifle fire silenced them and got to the top of the hill. The Japanese were withdrawing, and in the end they managed to capture Saddleburg with a lot less lives lost than what would have been. That's where he won his Victoria Cross.
So many things have come up in honour of the man that we know as Diver, which is Lieutenant Tom. So I've come up with a little one because of his inspiration to help other people that have served for Australia, currently and in the past, through introduction of Diver Derrick Porter. Yes, the beers has raised money for them with $1 a pint from every outlet that sells draft beer, going to help establish this defence shed. The defence shed primarily, importantly, is a meeting place where people that have suffered are mentored. So we have current service personnel talking to past serving personnel.
Once again, he was brought back to Australia and put into officer training school. He'd already been promoted from private to corporal to sergeant, and then he was put into officer training school where he graduated as a lieutenant. He was put in charge of a company, and then they were sent to New Guinea, to the island of Tarakan to capture that. And this is where it was heavily fortified. Derrick actually said the Japs were the toughest ones he'd come across in all his battles, and they were actually repelled, so they had to stop where they were for the night. And the Japanese had a light machine guns trained in a crossfire and straight down the track, and Derrick it was 3 a.m. in the morning, 3:30. They were expecting an attack from the Japanese, a counter-attack at 4 o'clock. Derrick heard a light machine gun burst of fire, and he sat up to see whether his men were okay, and got caught by the second burst, and he got hit by 5 bullets that ranged from his left hip to his right shoulder. A fellow, his runner called Currie, went out and dragged him back under cover, and he couldn't be evacuated immediately. He actually said to Currie that, that's it mate, I think I've had it, would you write to Beryl? That was his wife. So
Derrick Porter, he's such a hero, but not such a hero, I can't limit it to that. He's such an inspiration and so courageous that he's inspired other people with his legacy. His beautiful family talk about him so much. The RSL clubs, the whole state of South Australia. We don't want to forget this man, and we're not going to let people forget him because of his dedication, his commitment to do what he could to help Australia win the war.